My parents called my business a joke until I became successful. Family story, Reddit. Welcome to Silent Wars. In today's video, we delve into an emotional family story Reddit that explores the challenges of standing up to family expectations and finding your own path. This real and powerful story will take you through the highs and lows of navigating family dynamics and the personal growth that comes from breaking free. If you find this story inspiring, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Silent Wars for more heartfelt family stories and life lessons. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into a business, working day and night, pushing yourself through sleepless nights and setbacks, only to have the people closest to you, your family, dismiss your dreams. This is exactly what happened to me. My name is David. I'm 26. And I'm an entrepreneur who's built my own online business from the ground up. What began as a side hustle during my college years turned into a full-time venture that makes more money than I ever thought possible. But, despite my success, there was one thing I never saw coming: the complete disregard and mockery from the very people who should have been my biggest supporters. My parents. It wasn't always this way. When I first started my online store, I was still figuring things out. I had no clear direction and was juggling a full course load in university while trying to get my side business off the ground. It was a simple dropshipping store at first, selling gadgets. Nothing big, just something to make a little extra cash while I was in school. I didn't expect it to be much, but it was my way of doing something for myself. Something that wasn't tied to the traditional path that so many people around me were taking. At the time, I was surrounded by people who were focused on their real careers. My friends had internships and job offers lined up after graduation. They had a plan. They knew what success looked like. And so did my parents. My dad, a lawyer, and my mom, a nurse, had always been steadfast in their belief that success meant going to school, getting a degree, and getting a good-paying job with benefits. Anything else, especially a business started from home, was seen as a distraction at best, a pipe dream at worst. So, when I told my parents about my new venture, their response wasn't exactly what I hoped for. My dad, always the practical one, would often say, "David, you should focus on your studies. This online thing is cute, but it's not a real career." My mom, with her usual caution, would remind me that people didn't really make a living online, that I needed a real job, just like everyone else. For a long time, I let their words get to me. I wanted them to believe in me. I wanted them to be proud of the business I was trying to build. But instead of supporting my efforts, they shrugged it off as a hobby, something that I'd grow out of when I finally graduated and entered the workforce like everyone else. They didn't see the potential in what I was doing. They didn't believe in me, or the idea that a young kid running an online store could ever make it. Every time I tried to talk to them about my progress, they would dismiss it with a smile and a comment like, "That's nice, sweetie, but what's your real plan?" Despite all of this, I kept pushing. I worked late into the night, listening to business podcasts, watching YouTube tutorials, and reading books about marketing, branding, and e-commerce. Slowly but surely, I started to see the fruits of my labor. Sales started to come in. I refined my processes, and what was once a hobby turned into a full-time job that paid my bills, gave me independence, and allowed me to take vacations without stressing over my finances. Yet, even as my business began to grow, my parents still clung to the idea that what I was doing was just a phase, something that would eventually fizzle out. They didn't respect it, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration building up. After all, I was proving them wrong. But every success, every milestone I hit, was met with a disapproving comment or an attempt to downplay my achievements. I was making more money than they ever expected, yet they still treated my business like it was a joke. And it hurt. I had to ask myself, how could they be so blind? I had put in years of hard work, sacrificed social time, and taken on stress that most people couldn't even imagine, and yet they couldn't see it. They were so focused on their own vision of what success looked like that they couldn't accept the reality of my success. That was when I realized something. No matter how much I proved myself, they wouldn't understand. And honestly, I didn't need them to. I had proven to myself that I was capable, and that was enough. But the real turning point came when my parents, once so dismissive, suddenly wanted in on the action. That's when everything shifted. As my business grew, I began to experience a wave of emotions that I wasn't prepared for. It was the thrill of success, but it also came with a bitter undertone that was hard to ignore. What had started as a side hustle while I was still in college was now my full-time career. The sleepless nights, the endless hours spent learning about e-commerce, digital marketing, and customer service, all of that hard work was finally paying off. But there was one major issue I couldn't shake off. My parents still didn't believe in me. Despite the fact that my business was thriving, they couldn't comprehend how an online store, a business that operated from my bedroom, could be anything more than a fleeting venture. Every time I had a new achievement, such as hitting a new sales milestone or launching a successful ad campaign, I would eagerly share the news with them, hoping they'd finally come around. But instead of seeing the accomplishment, they saw a warning sign. "That's good, David, but don't forget you need a backup plan," my dad would say, as if the success I had already achieved wasn't enough. Even when I started earning enough to pay for my rent, buy a new car, and travel a little, things I had once only dreamed of, my parents remained skeptical. I remember one evening, I came home after a small vacation with friends. I'd paid for everything myself, of course, with money I had earned from my business. It wasn't a luxurious getaway, but it was the first time I'd had the freedom to do something like that. I wanted to share my excitement with them. But instead of being happy for me, my mom just gave me a look. One that I had seen countless times before. The, "I'm not sure this is a good idea" look. "You're doing well, David," she said, "but is this really sustainable? What's your plan for the future? What if the market crashes? What if it all falls apart?" I tried to keep calm, but inside I could feel my frustration building. I had proven that I could make this work, and yet, here they were, still doubting me. It felt like no matter how much I accomplished, it would never be enough to gain their full approval. I didn't need their approval, though. As my business continued to grow, I started to see that their skepticism was rooted in something deeper: fear. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, and fear of anything that wasn't part of the traditional path they had followed. I understood where they were coming from. My dad had worked tirelessly as a lawyer, and my mom had spent years in nursing. They had built their lives around the idea of a steady, predictable job with benefits. The idea of running a business from home, on the internet, seemed too risky for them. They couldn't fathom it as a legitimate path to success. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't just making money, I was building something that was mine. I had taken a risk, yes, but I had bet on myself, and I had succeeded. I had built my brand, cultivated a loyal customer base, and created a business that didn't rely on anyone else's approval or validation. The business was growing exponentially, and it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving that my unconventional path was just as valid as any other. Yet, despite my success, their reactions never changed. I would bring up my accomplishments, and my dad would nod, saying, "That's nice, but are you still thinking about getting a real job in case this doesn't work out?" It wasn't just about the money for them. It was about the validation that came from society's definition of success. I wasn't following the script they had written, and that made them uneasy. Still, I kept pushing forward. Each day, each new sale, each new milestone became my silent victory, a confirmation that I was doing something right. I didn't need their validation anymore. The more I succeeded, the more I realized that my success wasn't about them. It was about me proving to myself that I was capable of achieving something extraordinary on my own terms. The turning point had arrived, and I was no longer the kid trying to find his way. I had found my path, and it was leading to something far greater than I had ever imagined. It was an ordinary day when my mom called. I was sitting at my desk, working on new marketing strategies for my business, when the phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting it to be a client, or maybe one of my suppliers checking in. Instead, it was my mom, and her voice was uncharacteristically bright and excited. I couldn't remember the last time she'd sounded so upbeat. "David, you'll never believe who called me today," she exclaimed, almost as if she had stumbled upon some kind of revelation. I was curious but hesitant. "Who?" I asked, trying to focus on the task at hand. "It's your dad's old business partner. You remember him, don't you? John Stevens? Well, he reached out to me today, and he said he's been really impressed with what you've been doing. He's offering you a job in marketing at his firm." Her voice was practically bubbling over with enthusiasm. It took me a moment to process what she was saying. A job? A job in marketing? I wasn't sure what she expected me to say, but I knew exactly how I felt. After all the years of them dismissing my business, treating my success as a fluke, and mocking me for not following the traditional path, now they were offering me a job in marketing at someone else's company. It felt like a slap in the face. Suddenly, the very thing they had belittled my online store was enough to catch the attention of one of their old colleagues. And now, they wanted me to work for him? It didn't make sense. My silence must have been obvious because my mom rushed to fill the void. "David, this is huge. This could be a great opportunity for you. It's with a firm that has so many resources. And think of the stability. You'd have a real career, and you'd be set for life. We just think it's the right move, especially with the success you've had recently." She paused, almost as if she was waiting for me to share her excitement, but all I could feel was a growing knot in my stomach. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I'm not interested," I said, keeping the words calm but firm. "I'm doing just fine with my business. I don't need to work for someone else." Her response came quickly, as if she was bracing for my refusal. "David, please don't be stubborn. You've worked so hard, and now that you're making money, you need to think about the bigger picture. This is a real job, something stable, with benefits. You've always talked about wanting to help more people with your skills. Well, this is your chance to do that in a bigger way." I felt a surge of frustration building in me. "Mom, I am helping people. I'm helping hundreds of customers every day with the products I offer. I've built this business from the ground up, and it's more than just making money for me. It's about my independence, my vision, and doing things on my own terms." I could feel the anger creeping in, but I tried to stay calm. "Well, we just want what's best for you," she said, her tone turning more pleading. "This job would help you secure your future. Don't throw away this chance just because of your pride." Pride? It felt like a betrayal. After all those years of hearing that my business was a joke, that it would never last, now they were offering me a job working for someone else, as if that would somehow validate my success. They were so quick to overlook the hard work I had put in. They wanted me to give up my independence, my dream, to take a safer, more conventional route. And it was all for their idea of what was best. "I don't need their approval," I whispered to myself after the call ended. I felt a sense of dread creeping over me. The anxiety was building. Why now? Why after everything? I didn't want to be the child who was expected to follow the rules anymore. I wanted to make my own way. But as much as I knew I couldn't accept that job, a small part of me worried about the fallout. What would they think of me? What would it mean if I continued to choose this uncertain path? The tension between following my own dreams and meeting their expectations felt unbearable. But I wasn't going to give in. I had come too far, and the last thing I needed was to lose my sense of purpose by going down a path I knew would stifle me. But despite everything, the call from my mom had shaken me. It was the first time in my life that I truly understood how deep-rooted their need for control was. They didn't understand my dream, and as much as I hated to admit it, the idea of having them step back into my life, trying to tell me what to do, was terrifying. I had worked so hard to create something for myself, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that away. I never imagined it would come to this. After years of working tirelessly to build my business, proving to myself and the world that I could be successful on my own terms, I thought I had earned the right to live my life without the constant judgment and expectations of my parents. But that all changed during a phone call with my mom, a call that made me realize how deeply my success had unsettled them. It started innocently enough. At first, my mom was just calling to check in, as she often did. We talked about the usual things: family, the weather, how things were going with my business. But then, as the conversation wore on, her tone shifted. She suddenly became more serious, almost cautious, as if she were measuring every word. "David," she began, her voice quieter than usual, "you know how much we've sacrificed for you over the years. Your dad and I have always done what we could to support you. Your education, your tuition. All those years we worked hard to make sure you had everything you needed to succeed." I felt a pang of guilt, as I always did when she reminded me of the sacrifices they made. But that feeling quickly turned into confusion as she continued. "And now that you're doing so well, we need to talk about something. We've been thinking, and we think it's only fair that you help us out a little. All the money we spent on your education, all the things we've done for you now that you've got this business and you're making good money, we think it's time you paid us back." I froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did she really just say that? I had spent years working relentlessly, building my business from scratch. I had faced the skepticism, the doubt, and the ridicule from my parents, especially from my mom, who had always pushed me to follow a more traditional career path. And now, after everything, she was saying I owed them what? For the education they had provided? For the life lessons they gave me? It felt like a punch in the gut. I had always believed that the success I built was mine, earned through my own sweat and effort. But now it seemed like they were trying to claim a part of it. They felt entitled to it. They were no longer the supportive parents I had hoped for. They were looking at my success as something they could benefit from, something they could tap into because they thought they had a right to it. "Repay you?" I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean by that?" "Well, David," she said, almost as if it was obvious, "you have the money now. You're doing so well. It's only right that you help out. We've always been there for you. It's time for you to give back." I could feel the anger rising in me. How could they not see how wrong this was? I wasn't their investment to cash in on. This wasn't a loan I owed them. And yet, that's exactly how they saw it. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but the betrayal burned. I had worked so hard for this, and now they were acting like it was all just for them to claim a piece of. I had no intention of paying them back for something I didn't owe. I wasn't their ATM, and I certainly wasn't going to be their retirement plan. My success was my own, and it felt like the ultimate betrayal that they would try to take something that I had earned with my blood, sweat, and tears. But the hardest part? I knew this conversation wasn't over. The words my mother said still echoed in my mind. "You owe us." It was the last straw. After everything, after years of hustling, proving my worth, and building my business from nothing, my parents had the audacity to suggest I repay them for their sacrifices. They felt entitled to a portion of my success, as though it was their right because they had paid for my education. But I couldn't stand it anymore. For years, I had been the one to take care of the family. Every time something went wrong, it was me who fixed it, whether it was picking up the pieces financially or emotionally. I had always been the dependable son, the one who silently played the role of the family's safety net. But now that I had finally built something successful, something I could call my own, my parents' demand felt like a betrayal. I had spent years watching them dismiss my dreams, ridiculing my business as a phase. They had always pushed me toward what they considered a real job. Yet now, when my business was thriving and I had achieved financial independence, they wanted a piece of the pie. It was like they saw my success as an opportunity to cash in on the work I had done. But I wasn't going to let that happen. As my mom's words hit me, I knew it was time to stop being the backup plan. It was time to stand firm and set a boundary. I couldn't continue to let them take advantage of my hard work, and I wasn't going to let them make me feel guilty for not doing it. I wasn't their investment project, and I didn't owe them anything. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "I don't owe you anything. I built this success on my own. I worked for it, and I'm not going to hand over what's mine because you think you deserve a cut." The room fell silent. I could hear the shock in my mom's breath on the other end of the line, but I wasn't backing down. I had spent too many years letting people walk all over me, playing the role of the family's helpful son who could always be counted on to fix things. But this time, it was different. I was done being their fallback. I continued, my voice steady but unwavering. "I've done everything for you guys, but I'm not doing this anymore. My success is mine. I've earned it, and I'm not going to let you manipulate me into thinking I owe you just because you raised me." The anger I had been carrying for years, the frustration of feeling like I was never seen for my own achievements, finally came rushing out. I wasn't going to play along with their narrative anymore. I wasn't going to let them guilt-trip me into giving up my hard-earned success. My mom's response was full of disbelief, but it no longer mattered. I had said what I needed to say. I had drawn a line in the sand. For the first time, I felt empowered. I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore, and I wasn't going to let their expectations dictate how I lived my life. I hung up the phone, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had finally found the strength to stand up for myself, to put my foot down, and to stop letting anyone take what I had worked so hard to build. And for the first time in a long while, I felt free. The days following my decision to stand firm were some of the hardest I've ever faced. I had anticipated a backlash, but nothing could have prepared me for the full force of the fallout that hit. Once I set that boundary, the reactions from my family came flooding in. Angry texts, accusatory phone calls, and a flood of social media posts that made me feel like the villain in a story I never asked to be part of. My mom's post was the catalyst. She shared a long, dramatic rant on Facebook, painting me as the ungrateful son who had turned his back on the family after everything they had done for me. It was a bitter reminder of the years of belittling my business, and suddenly, she was trying to rewrite history, portraying herself as the victim. "Some children forget where they came from," she wrote. "When they get a little success, they think they're too good for their family." The post quickly gained traction, and the comments were exactly what I feared. A wave of people siding with her, condemning me for not helping. It wasn't just my immediate family members. Extended relatives and old family friends jumped in, telling me how disappointed they were in me, accusing me of abandoning the people who helped me get to where I was. Each notification on my phone was like a slap in the face. I could feel the weight of their words, each one more biting than the last. "You're ungrateful," they'd say. "Family always comes first," they'd accuse. But the more they attacked me, the more I realized how little their words meant. They were defending a narrative, not the truth. It wasn't just the online attacks. In the days that followed, my relatives began calling me nonstop. They all said the same thing. "You need to make things right with your family." My Uncle Roger, someone I'd always looked up to, sent me a message saying, "I can't believe you'd let this go so far. You're tearing apart the family." His words stung, especially since he hadn't ever been there to offer support when I needed it. Where were they when I was struggling? Where were they when I was pouring everything into my business, sacrificing my time and energy just to make it work? Now, they wanted to act as if I owed them something. I started to feel the weight of isolation. The quiet guilt crept in at night, making me question if I'd made the right decision. Was I too harsh? Was there something I could have done differently? But as I scrolled through the messages and saw the same tired accusations, I realized one important thing. Their perception of me wasn't my responsibility. They had used me for years, and now that I was successful, they wanted to rewrite the story and claim my success as theirs. The turning point came when Megan, one of the few people in the family who had always been supportive, left a comment on my post. "I've seen this for years, and I've never spoken up. But I can't stay silent anymore," she wrote. "Alex doesn't deserve this. He's been the one holding things together while we all got comfortable." Megan's words were a relief, a small sign that there were still people who understood my struggle. Soon after, others began to speak up too, questioning the narrative that had been spun by my parents. But that didn't make the sting of betrayal any less painful. The family I had spent years trying to please was now against me. They were attacking me for standing up for myself, for choosing my own success over the weight of their expectations. Despite everything, I knew in my heart that I had done the right thing, but the emotional toll was hard to ignore. I had become the villain in their eyes, and no matter what I said or did, I couldn't change their perception. The tension had been building for weeks, and I could feel it in every conversation, every call, and every silent moment that stretched between my family and me. I had set my boundaries. I had made it clear that I was no longer willing to be their emotional crutch, their backup plan, their punching bag. But even after everything, they weren't ready to let go. I had hoped that they would respect my decision to distance myself, but instead, they made a final desperate attempt to control me. One day, I was sitting in my office, wrapped up in work and trying to block out the constant barrage of texts and calls. I had started to build a life on my own terms, free from the weight of their expectations, and I wasn't about to let their guilt trips drag me back into that toxic cycle. But that afternoon, everything came to a head. My assistant buzzed me, her voice cautious. "Alex, there are two people here to see you. They say they're your parents." My heart sank. The last time I'd spoken to them, I'd made it crystal clear that I was done with the manipulation. But there they were, standing uninvited in the lobby of my office, acting like nothing had changed. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my nerves. I wasn't the same person they had known. I was stronger now, more confident, and I wasn't going to let them bulldoze me into submission again. I walked out of my office, and there they were. My mom, with that familiar, sickly sweet smile plastered on her face, as if nothing had happened. My dad standing stiffly beside her, arms crossed in a defensive posture. They were trying to play the part of concerned parents, but I wasn't buying it anymore. "Alex," my mom said, her voice bright and cheerful. "We just want to talk. It's been a while and we thought we could work this out." I folded my arms and looked at them, my patience wearing thin. "What are you doing here? You didn't think you needed an invitation, did you?" My dad let out a frustrated sigh. We're family, Alex. We just want to talk. Stop making this harder than it needs to be. I shook my head, unable to hold back the frustration. No, you're making this harder. You can't just show up here, uninvited, at my place of business. This isn't how things work anymore. My mom's face faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. We just want to talk, Alex. Please, we're not here to fight. I couldn't believe it. After all the years of belittling me, undermining my business, and now they thought they could just waltz in and make everything okay, it wasn't going to happen. No, I said firmly, stepping forward. You've been disrespecting me and my success for far too long. I don't owe you anything. Not my time, not my money, and not my respect. My dad's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Alex, you need to understand. We've done so much for you. You owe us. You owe us because we raised you. I could feel the anger boiling inside me. No, you don't get to say that anymore. You didn't raise me to be independent. You didn't raise me to think for myself. You raised me to serve your needs, to be your safety net. And I'm done with that. I don't owe you anything. There was a long silence, the weight of my words hanging between us. For the first time in my life, I saw my parents for who they really were. People who saw me as a tool, an asset to be used whenever it was convenient for them. They weren't the loving parents I had once believed them to be. They were just trying to claim a piece of the success they never believed in. Finally, my mom spoke, her voice trembling. You're really going to cut us off? Just like that? Yes, I said, without hesitation. You've already cut me off emotionally by never believing in me. I'm done. I turned to my assistant. If they ever come back, call security. And with that, I walked back into my office, leaving them standing there, stunned, in the lobby. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had stood my ground, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my parents, take that away from me. The emotional weight that had been holding me down for so long had finally been lifted. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. And as I sat back at my desk, I knew that I had finally taken control of my life. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself in a place I never thought I'd reach. My business was thriving, no longer just a dream or a side hustle, but a full-fledged, successful operation. It wasn't just the financial success that mattered. It was the fact that I had done it on my own terms, without needing to follow anyone else's blueprint. The weight of my parents' expectations, their constant manipulations, had been lifted, and for the first time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life. The best part? I didn't have to share my success with anyone who didn't believe in me. I wasn't shackled to their opinions or demands anymore. I had carved out a path that was mine and mine alone, and I was proud of what I had built. Sure, there were moments when I still felt the sting of their rejection and their refusal to acknowledge my achievements, but those moments became fewer and farther between as time went on. I didn't need their validation anymore. My accomplishments were enough. Unfortunately, as my business continued to grow, my family wasn't ready to let go. At first, it was subtle small comments from relatives who had once ignored my efforts, suddenly interested in what I was doing. But I didn't bite. I had learned the hard way that their attention was never for my benefit. It was always about what they could gain, what they could take. Their lies and guilt trips only confirmed that nothing had changed. They tried to manipulate me again, hoping to guilt me into offering financial help or opening doors to further opportunities. My mom, who had once been so quick to criticize my business, started sending texts filled with pleas and passive-aggressive messages. "You've come so far, Alex. We're just so proud of you. But we've been struggling lately, and a little help from you wouldn't hurt." I didn't even open half of them. I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to secure their place in my success, just like they had always done. They wanted me to be the safety net they could fall back on, but I wasn't having it anymore. My dad, the lawyer who had always belittled my business and told me it was a pipe dream, started sending cryptic messages, asking for favors or suggesting I consider helping the family out a bit. But I didn't feel that old sense of guilt anymore. Their words didn't hold the same weight. I had already broken free from their manipulation, and nothing they said or did could change the reality of that. And then, there was the social media drama. My mom posted a long rant about how I had abandoned my family, how I had turned my back on them when they had supported me all along. Of course, she conveniently left out the years of mocking and rejection, but it didn't matter. The truth was out there, and I didn't need to defend myself anymore. What mattered was that I had built something real, something that I could be proud of, and I had done it without them. As I looked back on everything I had endured, I realized just how far I had come. I had faced down my family's criticisms, ignored their manipulations, and still emerged stronger. I had secured my independence, not just financially, but emotionally. The freedom I felt now was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I was no longer defined by their expectations. I was no longer their burden or their backup plan. I was me, successful, self-made, and proud of what I had accomplished. In the end, the most important thing wasn't the money or the business, it was the freedom to live my life without constantly trying to meet their demands. It was the peace that came with knowing that I didn't owe anyone, not even family, anything. I had built my life on my own, and that was a victory I could carry with me every single day. In life, we often face situations where our efforts and dreams are underestimated or dismissed by those closest to us, especially family. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation from others, particularly when we've been taught that success must align with traditional paths. But true fulfillment comes when we embrace our own journey, regardless of others' expectations. Success is not defined by the approval of others, but by the courage to stand firm in our values, pursue what makes us happy, and find peace in our independence. As we age, we may encounter moments of doubt, but it's important to remember that it's never too late to define our worth on our own terms. Our worth isn't tied to past judgments, and we don't owe anyone an explanation for living a life true to ourselves. The real reward lies in knowing that we've followed our own path, learned from struggles, and grown stronger because of it. Life is about creating our own meaning, and at any stage, we have the power to build a life filled with purpose, joy, and self-respect. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this family story Reddit has touched your heart and inspired you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Silent Wars for more amazing content. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next video.